Gridiron Grinder! Hut hut hike!
All right, it's Friday night, Gridiron Grinder time. I'm Ryan. With me, as always, is my buddy James. Just a couple dudes hanging out, talking about what's going on in the NFL each week. This is episode 90, James, if my memory
Oh,
serves me correctly. We're closing in on triple digits, man. Pretty cool. And so, anyhow, for tonight, we're going to be kicking things off with Name That Stadium like we always do. After that, we'll talk about the news from this past week. And then we're going to spend some time covering the free agency recap for teams in the NFC. And last but not least, we'll close things off with question of the week. So, with all that being said, how's it going tonight, James?
it's going good. How's it going with you?
Pretty good, man. Pretty good. My back's hurting a little bit, so I'm guessing I'll be a little more wiggly in my chair tonight, but it's just part of getting old, man.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, let's jump into Name That Stadium. And so this is the part of the show for anybody who's watching. You can see James is out there traveling the country. Every week he's got a different stadium in his background. Typically throughout the regular season, it's a team that's got a home game for that weekend. We're in the off season now, and so there's some different sort of methodology for those picks. But anyhow, we're asking if you think you know what stadium that is, hit us up in our comments section. And the first person to get the answer right will get a special shout out in next week's show. James, where were you at last week, man?
Last week I was in Miami. I mean, again, for it was third or fourth week in a row, there was huge trade that I got all excited, huge trade or signing I got all excited about, and so I went down to Miami.
Yeah, and that was I'm sure you're talking about the Tyreek Hill trade.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was pretty
exactly.
big, and I mean you could have went with the Terod Armstead signing because that happened last week too. But yeah, Miami, man, they're having a heck of an off season.
Yeah, they are.
All
And it's
right, well,
sad
good.
because they're still only the second best team in their division. So
All right, so yeah, you're saying Buffalo obviously won. You think Miami's ahead of New England at this point?
yeah. Hmm.
Man, I don't know. I think New England is above Miami, but I guess we'll find out this year. That's,
Yeah, I just give Miami a little bit of an edge because Miami always seems to beat New England. So
yeah, I guess I'm looking at like overall, I think New England will have the more successful season. Maybe Miami will snipe a win from them, but new coaching staff, a lot of new pieces on the team. It should all bode well for them. But I guess because of that uncertainty and because of the Bill Belichick factor and everything going on in New England, I kind of still have some muscle memory to favor him. But
yeah,
um,
true. I'll give you that. I think we talked about last week. Did New England really do anything in free agency?
no,
No.
it was a quiet year for them. It was the opposite of last year. But this is more typical of how they handle free agency. So it's kind of, you know, it's not too surprising. It's just a matter of can it be effective, you know?
Yeah.
So, all right, well, good stuff, man. Let's kick it over and let's do our recap of this past week. There was a lot going on out there, and so we're just going to kind of skim through and hit some highlights and see what we get to. And a lot of the news relates to free agent signings, and so maybe some of that we'll skip through until we get to the free agent signing part of the show. But we can talk about certain things that have come up. And for example, the Lions are going to be hosting the NFL Draft. Uh, is it 2023 or 2024? Do you know?
I think it's 24. I don't remember. I
Okay.
my thought of it. The only I heard briefly about it was the Lions of the host and draft, and the radio host said, "Who the fuck wants to go to Detroit?"
Well, since it's just down the street for me, I'll be there. But and I
Yeah.
suggest you
Well, on
come into
top of that,
town,
the
man.
Lions are on Hard Knocks too this year.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, that was another big Detroit Lions piece that I'm excited for, man. I think Dan Campbell's going to be, a fun guy to watch on Hard Knocks. And, I know that some people they get sick of that kind of formula because it's the same kind of formula every year. They try to find some guys that are on the fringe of making the roster and do like big stories on them. They show the coaches having to cut players and how that works. And, like it just kind of, it seems like they follow the same sort of script. They just fill in different teams, different players, different names every year. But like I like it. I think the Dallas Cowboys one was a dud for me because Mike McCarthy just has like no freaking charisma. And I don't know, dude. It's like you can't even call him stoic. He just seems like he's not even. There's no leadership at all with him, man. That really bothered me. But with the Lions, I think it's going to be 180 of that. I think Dan Campbell, he's a player's coach. Everybody gets behind him. They love his energy. They love his aggression. And, it should make for some good TV, man.
Yeah, it should. I'm intrigued by it. So it's 2024 that the Lions are hosting the draft. 23 is in Kansas City.
Okay. Well, hey, 2024, man, that could be a good time for you to make a trip back home.
Yeah, it could be. I
Me,
actually thought of that when I heard it. I was like, maybe. Obviously, I probably should make a trip back home before then, but
well, yeah, no, I mean, specifically for that intent, come back,
yeah,
me, you, Nick, some of the homies, go check out the draft, man. That'd be a good, unique experience.
yeah. I've always kind of had this desire to go to the draft. That, how many years we watched it. It was always in New York, and I didn't want to fucking go to New York, so
Yeah.
it was like. But I always thought it'd be kind of cool to take a trip to the draft.
Oh yeah, no, I when they did it in Chicago, I thought that looked super cool. And then honestly, even this year it's in Vegas. I thought, geez, I'd love to go to Vegas for the draft. That'd be a pretty cool party, I'm sure. Like it'd be a good time.
Yeah. Well, I wonder if they're doing what they like before. It was what 2020 was supposed to be in Vegas, and like they had like some like huge plan to have like an island out in like the middle of the Bellagio fountains and have the draft picks take a boat out to the
Oh,
podium
jeez.
and like just huge elaborate plan for it. So I wonder if they're going forward with any of that.
It's interesting. I don't know. I'll have to check it out. I mean, we got, I don't know what, like 3, 4 weeks before the draft. I think it's the 28th it starts or something. So
Yeah,
it's not too late, James. We could still sneak a trip in.
maybe.
All right, so let's go through some other news. I saw, actually, just a minute ago, I saw Dolphins cornerback Xavier Howard agreed to a 5-year extension for 50.69 million. That's pretty good signing. I think what was it? Was it last year or the year before? He was complaining about money, and they kind of reworked his deal a little bit. I think he believes he's worth more than that. Um, but it's a 5-year deal, so he must be happy to sign a contract for that long.
Yeah. Sorry, I just saw a headline that I was like, what?
Yeah, no problem. This is one that I don't know where this is going to go anywhere, but I guess we got to mention it. But Colin Kaepernick, it looks like he's going to throw in front of some scouts this week. It looks like it's at Michigan's spring game, University of Michigan spring game. Um, I don't know, dude. I mean, you think anybody's going to seriously give him a look at this point?
I don't know. Is he going to change the location of the
Oh, at the last minute?
exhibition at the last minute again?
Yeah, no, I feel like he's rattled the cage too many times, and he's been out of the league for so long right now. I look at guys like Baker Mayfield are like way higher up on the pecking order to get a job over him. And
Yeah, and nobody wants Baker Mayfield, so
case in point, man, case in point. So like, what's going on with Kaepernick? I don't know. Unless he can call in a favor somewhere where I don't, maybe he's got like some dirt on a coach somewhere, and it's like I just don't see how he gets back in the league at this point. Just my opinion.
yeah,
I think he's got a better shot going somewhere where he can be like a quarterbacks coach or something and start working it from that angle.
yeah.
Okay, skimming through some of the other headlines here. Oh, there was an overtime rule change for the playoffs, and it's just going to be for the playoffs, not for the regular season. Basically, I didn't read the whole article, but it talks about it's going to give each team the opportunity to get the ball. Like right now, if the first team that gets the ball scores a touchdown, it's over. Now they're going to give each team a chance to score, and then go from there. Then it kind of goes to sudden death. And so, it is what it is, man. I've heard, some coaches are obviously big fans of it, which is how it got approved. And then some are kind of like, hey, you got to win. And then I saw like Mahomes even had a comment about, you got to figure out how to win no matter what, or whatever he was saying. And it's like, it's weird. It's like you got 60 minutes to get it done. And if you can't, it's like, how do you make it fair without it being an endless amount of overtimes,
Yeah. So the best reference of this I heard this week was this is the participation trophy of NFL fucking rules. Every
Jeez.
quarterback's got to got to touch the ball. It's like
Yeah.
it's like I don't know if you can remember all the way back to Little League as how many years ago it was. At some point everyone has to get in a bat.
Yep.
It's like and if you look at it, the key to it is you don't want to lose, fucking play defense in overtime. Imagine that.
Exactly. There's
Um,
two sides to the ball. You got to be good both ways. Anything can happen. And it's like, if you don't want it to come down to that kind of a scenario, then find a way to get it done in the first four quarters of the game.
yeah, and so you want to have it okay. So argue that well the coin flip's a fluke and this and that and okay so tie it to strategy, tie it to like the first coin flip at the beginning of the game. You get the
Yeah.
ball in the first half in overtime, or you get the ball to start the second half,
Yeah. Yeah. And,
or the
in
home
talking about the
team
coin
always
toss,
gets the
man,
ball.
so what was it this past year or the year before where Dallas had that weird deal where they had to kick both times? Do you remember that happened? Like
No.
yeah, so like they deferred, or they messed up the call, and they ended up having to kick both to start the game and then at halftime. And it was like a rare, like once ever, yeah, and maybe you can look it up and tell me, but it's almost like, how about you get rid of that and it's just this simple. You get to call it heads or tails, and if you're right, you're receiving the ball. If you're wrong, you're kicking the ball. And then it flips for halftime. And it's like there's no more messing around. Like I don't know. I mean, I like that if you win, you have a choice, but it's like the defer and then the direction and all this, it's like it's more complicated than it has to be, man.
Oh, it was I
Yeah, like
see. I
Dak
remember
messed up the call and it was like, what the heck?
I remember this. So yeah, Dak said defer, but I like vaguely remember this. But the official said heard him. So he said kick first, but meant to say defer. And so he tried to switch it, but the first thing out of his mouth was what he had to pick, what he picked. So since it was kick, then that meant the Rams had the choice to start the second half.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
So the Rams obviously picked receive to start the second half. When was it?
It's
Was in
just it's just
2019.
foolish. Yeah, it's just foolish that that could even happen, man. It just tells you that some of these rules are just too complicated. And then I saw one guy had this idea of, it was almost, I don't know, it was like, if you go to overtime, it's up to the field goal kickers. And it's like you just see who can make as many 50 yarders or something. I don't know. It's like, come on. It's tough, man. It's tough. So where do you draw the line? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Like what college does is a little bit too far.
Yeah.
I mean, now with this with the participation trophy in the NFL, what the fuck's next? Like, to settle instead of going to extra innings in baseball, you have a home run derby.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't know. It's messed up. All right, but so yeah, let's just we'll keep it rolling here. So in other news, Bruce Arians has retired from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Forced
Uh,
out.
so I wondered if it was something like that because when Brady retired, there was talk about a rift between him and Bruce Arians. But then I also wondered, could it have been a health thing? Because I want to say when he left Arizona, his health had something to do with it. And, you know, he's getting long in the tooth. And so it could have been a couple different factors. Um, either way, they're moving him to the front office, and Todd Bowles is going to assume the head coaching duties. Um, Todd Bowles, I remember when he got the job as the Jets head coach. I like him. I think he's a really, really strong defensive coordinator. I thought he was a little bit soft spoken as a head coach. And so hopefully this time around, he will have learned a couple things and he'll be maybe a little bit more aggressive with his demeanor and with his communication. Um, he's got Brady, so he's got the luxury of he's got one of the best leaders of all time on the field for him. But he's got to do better than he did the first time around. That's all I'm saying.
So I think Bowles' problem when he was head coach of he was with the Jets, was clock management.
Okay.
And I thought that was his biggest problem. I thought he was a fine coach. He just needed the clock management, kind of like Anthony Lynn and some other coaches I've called out for clock management issues. What's his face and the chart with the Chargers, Staley, those guys. But he has the ultimate clock manager in Tom Brady now, a quarterback. So I
That's
think
true.
that kind of is going to make up for his failings there, and at least he could learn. And with Arians retiring, it tells me that the rumors of Brady wanting to be traded to San Francisco, the rumors of Brady wanting to be traded to Miami, are all true
Okay.
because he didn't want to be coached by Arians. So what he did was he retired, and when he decided to unretire, because apparently this has been known since Brady decided to unretire that
Oh,
Arians was going to do this.
okay.
Because apparently Tom Brady was told before he unretired that Arians was moving to the front office, or right after he retired. One of those two things. Like I don't remember the exact time. It might have been like the day after where Brady was told this. And I think what happened was Brady said, "I'm going to unretire, but I'm not going to be coached by Arians." Because if you look in going into the offseason after Brady retired, Arians was having all these talks about how excited he is to coach Kyle Trask and this and
Yeah.
that, and then somebody asked him if Brady decides to come back, would you trade him? And he said, well, if Brady comes back, he's going to play for the Buccaneers. Period.
Yep. I remember that.
So I think this is kind of orchestrated by Brady because if you look back, Brady always said he was going to play till he was 45.
Okay. Well, hey, where there's smoke, there's fire. So I'm
Yeah.
sure there's some stuff going on there, and I think it's all right. It gives Todd Bowles an opportunity. So I'm excited for him. And his thing with the Jets, I just remember, a long time ago, I forget, it was like on NFL Network or something. They were saying he was kind of like leadership in 25 words or less. It was like he just was like so concise with everything he said that um, some of the critics were like, hey, don't you maybe gotta like do some things a little differently to get through to certain players? Like it's not all, you know, one thing's going to work for everybody. It's like you got to have a couple different ways of getting to these guys. And he was kind of like monotone, only had the one, this is how I do it kind of thing. Um, but hey, I got my fingers crossed for the guy. I'm rooting for him. All right, so moving on. I saw Malcolm Jenkins, defensive back, played for the Saints, played for the Eagles, retiring after 13 years. Um, I liked him a lot, man. And I think he was a good success story talking about how you can convert from cornerback to safety to prolong your career in the NFL. And he was a very smart player. And it just, when he made that choice, and it worked like a charm. I've always wondered why we don't see more cornerbacks doing that.
Hmm.
And I've heard that some of it's about money. They want a certain amount of money, and cornerbacks get paid more than safeties, and then some of it's about pride. Like I'm a cornerback; it's a more coveted position. Uh, I don't know. I think he had it right. I want to keep playing the game and try and win some championships, and whatever way you got to do that. And so, and he was a difference maker in both positions, and so good for him, good career, and best of luck in his retirement. I'm sure we'll see him around somewhere. He's one of those guys that he always got a lot of attention, so he's going to be on TV doing something, I'm sure.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, we'll see, but good for him.
Oh yeah. So back to Lions news, and we don't have to talk a ton about this, but Brad Holmes is saying he's been talking to a couple teams about trading the number 2 pick. He kind of like sandbagged a little bit, like, oh, I'm not talking to a lot of teams, but I've talked to a few or something. And James, just as a Lions fan, I'm telling you, I wish they would be able to trade that pick. I
Hmm.
think they're going to be hard pressed to do it because there's just not a lot of leverage there when the top guys on the board are offensive tackles and the Lions are locked in at both tackle positions. And so you know, unless a team falls in love with a quarterback and wants to trade up that high, or they're like that convinced they got to get this specific offensive tackle, man, I don't know. I'm just nervous that they're not going to be able to pull it off, but I hope they do because we need draft picks, and I just don't think the value is there for us at number 2 for
Hmm.
what we need. It's not the right alignment on the board. And so if we could trade out of that pick, man, I'd be thrilled.
Yeah, I want him to trade out of that pick because, well, I want him to draft Malik Willis. So that's my dream pick. And number 2 is a little bit too high for him.
It's
Like,
steep, yeah.
I mean,
Where would you be comfortable with them taking him? 10? 15?
no, he's Malik Willis isn't going to make it out of the top 10.
So what do you
Guaranteed.
think? 8?
I
5?
I give me a minute. I have to look at the draft order.
Sorry, I'm just putting you under the pressure. While you're looking that up, I'll tell you just some other quick news. The Ravens signed John Harbaugh to a 3-year extension. I liked that move, but I was curious by it because they still haven't signed Lamar, and man, it was weird because it seemed like just like a year or two ago, I'm trying to remember when it was, but Harbaugh was like on the hot seat in a major way. And I kind of thought the team was like fully committed to Lamar and that was going to be, the priority. You got to get that done and then you figure out what you want to do with Harbaugh. I like Harbaugh as a coach. I think he's a really smart, uh, good, level headed leader. I think last year he got a little crazy with going for it on 4th down. Some of that's because he kept kind of deferring to Lamar, and it worked a little bit, and then it started blowing up in their face. And so, some of that, I don't know. I like Harbaugh as a coach, but I've just, like I said, it was curious to me as, him getting it done before Lamar got it done. I know it's a coach versus a player and it's all different, but I was expecting it to be the other way around.
Yeah. So looking at the draft order, 6, 8, and 9, I could see all 3 of those teams wanting to draft a quarterback.
Okay.
That's Carolina, Atlanta, and Seattle.
So you think we got to do it by 5?
I, honestly, I think Carolina needs a quarterback to step in now,
Okay. Yeah,
and
I agree.
I think that's Kenny Pickett. I don't think Malik Willis is ready to start day one.
Okay.
I think Kenny Pickett is. I think so. I would say 7.
Yeah,
Or
but
even trade back with Carolina 6.
let me ask you this though. Carolina takes Pickett. I don't see them making the playoffs with a rookie quarterback this year. As weak as the NFC is, I just don't see it happening. And because of that, I don't see Matt Rule and company surviving beyond this next year. And so it's just weird that they didn't get more aggressive to get a veteran quarterback. I don't think that they got more than a year left, man. They gotta get to the playoffs this year or it's over for them.
So I don't see Matt Rule surviving past this year, no matter what.
Okay.
I see Matt Rule going back to college at the end of the year, and I don't even think if they don't make the playoffs this year, I don't think they fire him. I think he steps aside.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it could be it's like a 6-1 half a dozen another. It's the intention is that you're going to be gone. He's smart enough to see the writing on the wall and step down to save some face instead of getting fired.
Yeah,
Okay.
I I think you might be right. You might be right.
All right. So let's see other news. You know, I did see an article. This isn't crazy. Well, there's a couple of them, I guess. But I'll talk about this one first with Taysom Hill. It sounds like Dennis Allen is going to be supposedly anything can happen once they start playing games, but having him focus more on playing tight end this year. And I'm all for that, man. I think that should have been something that he was doing more all along because I just always felt like he could still do the gadget plays where he, randomly plays quarterback or randomly goes to running back or randomly plays special teams. But for the money they're paying him, it just seems like he needs to have like a primary dedicated position where if he's not in a gadget role, he's in a dedicated role somewhere else to get the most bang for your buck out of him. I like what Dennis Allen's doing this. I would have done this all along if it was me.
So I'm torn on it. Like, yeah, I kind of agree with you, but I kind of disagree with you because he's kind of just Taysom Hill is kind of just as the Swiss Army knife
Hmm.
of pro football. Like you can put him anywhere. Yeah, maybe you're right. Have him focus more on playing tight end, get better at playing tight end. But I think he's better split out as opposed to being a tight end.
I just I like the gadget stuff. I do for sure. I just think you're paying the guy, 10 plus million, whatever it is now. I know it used to be 10 plus million. That's a lot of money for a part-time player. And I don't know. I would just I would keep doing the gadget stuff, but I would make sure that he's got a full-time role outside of that. That's all I'm saying.
Makes sense.
All right, man. So 49ers, it's been quiet with Jimmy G. John Lynch saying he's not going to cut him. They're going to wait this thing out. Trey Lance sounds like, Shanahan saying he's going to be the guy. He's going to, start sooner than later. But that if it comes down to it, they'll hang on to Jimmy G. I like their strategy, man. They're telling other teams, hey, look, we're not going to panic. If you want him, you got to make a respectable offer. If you don't want him, no biggie. We'll hang on to the guy. And so, it looks a little bit weird with him and Trey Lance, and it's like, okay, what's going to happen if the regular season comes and he's still there? But I think from a like a game theory standpoint, I think Lynch is playing it right.
Yeah. Well, with when the regular season comes, if Jimmy G's still on the roster, Jimmy G's starting the first game of the season. And the 49ers season is shot. They're not going to make it to the Super Bowl. Or I'm sorry, they're not. Day one, they're not going to win the Super Bowl. I mean, Jimmy G's not the quarterback that can win you the Super Bowl. He can take you to the playoffs. He can be fine, but he has those what the fuck moments every so often that kill you.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and he's usually pretty good during the regular season. It's come playoff time, it's like, wow, things really just fall off a cliff for him.
Hmm.
And so do you think that he starts week one because they want to fluff up his trade value, or do you think he starts week one because he's legitimately better than Trey Lance?
He's legitimately better than Trey Lance right now. Trey Lance isn't ready.
Man, it's weird. There've been a lot of rumors about Lance not looking good, and they traded a lot of freaking stuff to get him, man. It'll
I
be
mean, they
bad if he's
fucked
not ready to roll by week one.
if they had traded for Mac Jones or
Yeah.
picked Mac Jones as opposed to Trey Lance, I think it's a different story. I think actually there's a chance that with Mac Jones, the 49ers could have gone to the Super Bowl instead of the Rams.
Man, it's wild, but you know, you could be right. Um, all right. Other news, man. What are you seeing that we missed? Anything? We
I
cover it pretty
just
good.
we covered it pretty good, except for yesterday. Caesar Sportsbook released their over unders for the season or their win totals for the NFL
Oh, nice.
preliminarily. And a couple things I notice on it is they have the Lions over on or win total at 6.
Oh man, I was gonna say seven, but I like that.
Yeah. But they have, like we talked about, the Patriots and the Dolphins are tied at 8.5.
Okay.
And when you do the math, when I counted how many double digit wins, in the AFC you had 4, and in the NFC you had 5.
Really?
Yeah, which was I thought was interesting. In the NFC you have the Cowboys, the Packers, the Bucks, the Rams, and the 49ers. While in the AFC you have Broncos, Chargers, Chiefs, and the Bills.
Yeah, okay. But is it because the expectation is the AFC so good, so many teams are good that they're just going to be beating up on each other, so it's going to be hard for the cream to rise to the top? Whereas the NFC, you've got a handful of good teams and then everybody else is kind of garbage, so it's going to be more disparity.
I I think so because nine nine of the 14 teams in the AFC, 14, 16 teams.
Yeah, there's 16 each way.
Yeah. I'm sorry. 9 of the highest 14 teams, like what would be the playoff teams, 9 of them are, if you rank them 1 through 32, you do the top 14, 9 of them are in the AFC.
Okay. Yeah, so that makes sense.
Because you
Uh,
have some like huge disparities like in conferences. Like you have the Packers at 11. Let's go with Cowboys. Cowboys at 10.5, Eagles at 9. And well, that's kind of close. But like, oh, let's go south. That's the one I meant to look at. You had the Bucks at 11.5, and then the Saints at 7.5,
Yeah, that's a big drop.
and then Panthers at 6 and Falcons at 5.5.
Yeah.
I just thought it was interesting. I like looking at the win totals.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, no, I like that. I'm gonna check that out. All right, what else you got?
That was it.
Okay.
Oh
Well,
wait,
that's the news. Oh,
the
yeah.
the new game, the unofficial Wordle spinoff.
Okay.
It's called the Weddle.
The Weddle. Okay.
Yes.
I don't know what is that all about.
It's apparently where you have to guess a player's name as opposed to a word. It's just like, and they have like 2,000 different NFL players' names in there, and like if if you guess a player and like you have a box on the side, if it's yellow. You're on the right side of the ball and stuff like that. It's like, are you serious? Like this Wordle craze is ridiculous now.
Oh, all right. Yeah, I don't know enough about it, but I don't know. It's football related, so it might be cool. Okay, so that's the news for the past week. Let's shift things over and let's do a little bit of a recap on the free agency signings so far, or activity, whatever you want to call it, for the teams in the NFC. So we did this for the AFC last week. Took a lot of time. Tonight we're doing the NFC. We'll start with the NFC East, James, and we'll look at the Dallas Cowboys. A lot of what I've seen them do so far is re-signing existing players. So they re-upped on Michael Gallup, Jeremy Sprinkle, Dalton Schultz, Demarcus Lawrence, Leighton Vander Esch, Malik Hooker. The one that I liked that they definitely did was Jaron Curse. I thought he had a great year last year, and they got him back on a good deal, 2 years, 10 million. I think that's very reasonable. And they re-signed some special teams guys. Really, when you look at their outside signings, they brought in James Washington, formerly of the Pittsburgh Steelers. They brought in Dante Fowler. Um, it's not been very flashy, and I think when you look at what they lost, they traded away Amari Cooper. Connor Williams is gone, and La'el Collins is gone. Um, you know, I think they're feeling some salary cap pain, and that's what their free agency looks like to me. Is that they ran out of money, and so this is the best they can do to keep it together. Um, and it makes me think that we can expect them to take a little bit of a step back this year, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Jerry Jones was too distracted by his new daughter suing him or something, because I think somebody forgot to inform the Cowboys that the off season and free agency started.
Yeah, well, I mean, and we're going to get to the Rams later, but it makes me wonder, you know, how a team can manipulate the cap to such a large degree, and then other teams, it's like they either don't know how to do it, or they don't want to do it, or there's some other reason. It's like for how hungry Dallas is to get a frickin' win, it just seems like they would be ones leveraging everything. Because let's face it, Jerry Jones, clock's ticking, man. He hasn't won something in a long time. And, I don't know. It's just weird. I would have expected the Cowboys to be a team to have spent more money and done all this crazy shit like you see the Rams and these other teams doing. And instead it's like it's the other way. It's like they're in salary cap hell and they're still losing a bunch of guys.
But the Cowboys aren't in salary cap hell. They're
Well,
like
maybe not now,
they're, they're like
because
15 million under the cap. Like you
yeah,
have room to do stuff.
but that's
And
but that's because Amari Cooper's gone, Lyle Collins is gone, Connor Williams is gone. Like it's because of it. A lot of that, I'm sure, is Amari Cooper. But it's I don't know. I guess I'm surprised. And I will say specifically with Amari Cooper, I'm surprised that he's not one of these ones where they re-signed him to some weird deal, pushing out all the years and whatever to keep that offensive firepower intact because they were one of the top offenses. It just seems like that was their bread and butter. Why mess with it?
well, the reason why you do that is because you're not the amount of sorry, I was looking at their salary cap and I saw Anthony Brown and I was like, they signed Antonio Brown?
No,
I
no,
was
no.
like, no, Anthony Brown. So I had to double check it. So you're not going to pay, like Cooper was going to make what, like 17, 18 million this year? And you're not going to pay $18 million for your number 3 wide receiver.
Yeah, I mean, hey, I don't know, man. I hear what you're saying. I just think that If it was me, I think they would have been better off keeping him and keeping that nucleus for that offensive firepower than doing all this and losing these other guys and doing all this shit. It's like I just don't see how they're going to be better. That's all I'm saying. Unless they have like a home run in the draft and get a lot of impact players right off the bat, I think they're taking a step back.
No, I give you that. Like I was just saying that they they forgot the free
Yeah.
agency period started, and
Yeah, it's like okay, if you're gonna let him like it yeah, it's like if you're gonna say that, if you're gonna say Amari Cooper, you can't pay that guy that much because he's fallen down the pecking order, um, well that's fine. Then take that money and go and sign like some fucking stud defensive guy, you know? Like they should have went after frickin' Bobby Wagner or somebody, It's like then do that, and then we could be like, oh, yeah, you got rid of Cooper, but you made a nice splash over here. It's like they got rid of Cooper, and then they got rid of two guys on their offensive line, and it's like they got nothing to show for it in return. It's like, oh man, that's not how you get better. So,
yeah,
you
no,
know,
I totally get it.
I mean, if a guy was a bad seed, yeah, sometimes you get addition through subtraction, but that's not what's going on here. All right, so yeah, I'm beating a dead horse, James. Let's move on to the New York Giants. They signed Tyrod Taylor. I actually I like that signing. I'm a big fan of Tyrod Taylor. And then other than that, I mean, I'm just looking at really what did they do of significance. They got Matt Breida. That maybe helps if they trade Saquon Barkley. Otherwise, he's just in the background. Ricky Seals Jones, they brought him in at tight end, which, that's not bad to have him come in and replace Evan Ingram. Um, Ricky Seals Jones, he's had some off field issues in the past. I think he's been pretty cool these last couple of years, though. He's one of those guys where the potential's there. It just seems like he never really like breaks through that ceiling of what everybody thinks he can do. But either way, I think it was a good signing, not like lighting the world on fire. John Feliciano at offensive lineman and Mark Glowinski. I think those are probably their two best signings, to be honest. They're strengthening the trenches a little bit, and that's important to
Yeah.
do.
So I like that. I like the Tyrod Taylor signing, and you know why I like the Tyrod Taylor signing is because Daniel Jones sucks at the quarterback position,
Yeah,
and especially with Jones, like last year, I believe he hurt his neck, and that's a scary proposition for a
that's
quarterback with
true.
neck issues. Like look at Peyton at the end of his career, he hurt his neck and he was never the same quarterback. So I really like the Tyrod Taylor signing. I like the fact that they're putting offensive linemen or getting offensive linemen. That's about it. Like all these other moves, not really anything to write home about.
Agreed. Okay, let's talk about the Philadelphia Eagles next, James. They had, I think their big signing was linebacker Hassan Reddick. I like that move. Um, I'm kind of looking at their list, man. They had some re-signings like Boston Scott. That's cool. I like Boston Scott. They re-signed Fletcher Cox, re-signed Derek Barnett. I'm not seeing. Oh man, this one they signed. This one's under the radar, which I like a lot. It's actually a reasonable deal. Kaiser White at linebacker signed him 1 year, 5 million. He was a guy I was hoping the Chargers would bring back because he had a very productive year with them. Um, I think that's actually a really good signing for Philly. And other than him and Reddick, it's kind of been a quiet off season for Philly, man.
Yeah, it has been like they did some good things by like bringing people back, but I really like the Kaiser White signing that hit a need, and Hassan Reddick. That's a lot of money though.
Yeah, what's that?
Hassan Reddick.
Okay, what was his deal?
It was 3
Oh,
years,
3 years, 45 million.
45,
Yeah, that's a
and
lot,
max
man.
value of almost 50.
Yeah, that's a lot. I mean, he's kind of, I like Hassan Reddick, but he's one of those guys that has always kind of been just a little bit less of, he hasn't met the expectation of where he was drafted in the first round. And now that he's on his third team, I think you take some of that pressure off. But he just signed a big money contract, so that pressure's back on, my friend.
Hmm.
Okay, so moving on. Washington football team, James. Their big thing obviously was trading for Carson Wentz. Um, Aside from that, they signed Andrew Norwell at guard, which I think was a good move. It replaces Brandon Scherf, who they lost in free agency. And I'm not really seeing anything notable other than that. I mean, they re-signed McKissick, they re-signed, some other guys, Cam Sims, Cornelius Lucas. Um, yeah, Bobby McCain re-signed. There's not a lot of fresh meat on the Washington Commanders.
Well, that's also probably because after the trade for Carson Wentz and having to pay all that money, they are barely. Oh, they're a little bit under the cap, but you still have to account for all the rookie deals stuff. Like they don't have that much space to fit much in.
Not a lot to play with. So I guess let me ask you with the Wentz thing. Do you think that this is good for them, bad for them? Is this them settling? Is this them, you know, like what do you make of this move for them?
Oh, I hate it. I What they gave up for Carson Wentz, he is not worth it at all. Um, to give up all
I don't
three,
think they gave up
three,
what was it, a third rounder or a
two,
third and
two
two
third,
two
two
thirds?
third rounders. The the second third rounder can convert to a second rounder, and then they're swapping second round picks in 2022, and it's just like you're giving up a bunch of draft picks, and that's what Washington needs. They need talent to come in.
Hmm.
They and you don't want to be giving up your draft picks like that,
Uh, you know,
and they're taking 100% of the salary hit for him.
yeah, I think it's like to me, I don't think they gave up a ton. I just think that it only works if their team is like one more step up than they are right now. If their defense can look like it did, not necessarily last year, but the year before, where they were surprising everybody and they were, in that like top 10, if they could do that, I think that Wentz is a fine quarterback for them. If their team is mediocre sort of across the board, then Wentz is really a waste of a trade because we know he's not the guy that can put the team on his shoulders. And so, I think if they were a quarterback away from doing something, then it might have worked. But I'm worried that they're asking more out of him than what they're going to be able to get.
Yeah, and as you saw in Indy, even if they were a quarterback away from doing something, Wentz isn't the guy. Look at Indy, where Indy was a quarterback away from doing something, and they got Wentz and didn't make the playoffs.
That's true. And I think there were some extenuating circumstances with that. The way that the offseason went and the injuries, and then, they had a brutal start to the year, but they definitely closed it in weak fashion. And so it was, a thumb to the eye, so to speak. But I hear what you mean, man. Okay, let's move it on over to the NFC North. And so we'll start off with the Chicago Bears, James. Ah, man, I'm looking at this ESPN article. Marquee signings: Lucas Patrick, Nicholas Morrow, Byron Pringle, Al Qaeda Muhammad at wide receiver. I mean, at defensive end. Justin Jones at defensive tackle. I mean, honestly, they're calling these marquee signings. None of these are really marquee, in my opinion. Justin Jones, I think that's a decent signing. The rest of these are really, these are under the radar, insignificant kind of moves, man.
Yeah, Chicago's another team that I think they're in salary cap hell as well. I'm trying to go back and forth between two web pages, so give me 1 second. Oh, I didn't have it open. That's why I wasn't finding it.
Yeah, and I think, the big news for them is not just what they signed, but it's that they traded away Khalil Mack. Akeem Hicks, they're letting him walk away in free agency. And so they're by having such a quiet, sort of ugly offseason so far, I think it just kind of shows that they're squarely in a rebuild now, which is weird because this is year two for Justin Fields at quarterback. You would think that if they could stretch their dollar somehow, they would be putting some guys around him and doing some things instead of taking a step back, because it's like now you got your franchise quarterback going into year two and you're actually going to get worse. That, I don't know. That just seems like somewhere, somehow they messed up the sequence.
Yeah, I think my salary cap tracker is off because looking at it, it shows every team under the cap.
Okay.
Wow.
Are you looking
No,
at
it's
over the cap or Spotrac
well, I
or?
was looking at Spotrac, and then so I switched over to over the cap just to double check it. And yeah, everybody but the Bills, and the Bills are like only $200,000 over.
Okay. Yeah, so that just must mean everybody by now has made all the right
Wow.
moves to get right-sided except for the Bills, which is good. It's good.
Ah, so interesting.
Yeah, so Chicago, they're having a shit off season. It's not
Yeah,
looking
yeah.
good, which is nice for the Lions because maybe they'll beat the Bears. So, that's good. Well, let's talk about the Lions because they're up next. And James, we've talked about this before. I'm kind of bummed out about the Lions offseason so far. I do like that they re-signed some guys that stepped up last year, like Charles Harris and Tracy Walker. I thought for sure Charles Harris was going to get a decent contract out there in free agency. They brought him back. I'm glad about that. But really, their big signing is DJ Shark at wide receiver, which kind of bums me out, man. I mean, I wanted Allen Robinson because I believe that this team needs a wide receiver one. The problem is you brought in a guy that's really a wide receiver two at best, and now you're going to pair him with Amon-Ra St. Brown. It's just not enough, man. You got to get that number one wide receiver, and I don't. And then if you're not, I know they swung and missed on Marcus Williams, and I know that they did try for Allen Robinson and it didn't work out there. But if you're Brad Holmes, you got to have something to show for this offseason other than DJ Shark. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, so I like Brad Holmes, his ability to find the talent in the back end of the draft.
Yeah, so you're saying don't panic because it's going to be organic growth. They're going to do it through the draft. They're going to do it the right way, which is really the better long-term way to do it. I just think, it's kind of like what the Bengals did starting a couple years ago. They got those, couple guys on defense to start building a core. And then they followed it up by a few more guys. And then their core turned into a really solid unit on defense. And it's like, I would have thought that the Lions would have at least plucked two or three guys that could have turned into long-term fixtures, and it just hasn't happened. I mean, I will say this, I did like that they brought back Jared Davis at linebacker. I know that his last couple seasons have been banged up with injuries, but he was productive when he was healthy. Um, he hasn't lived up to that first round draft pick when the Lions originally had him, but I think he's serviceable, at least as a role player, maybe not as a starter. And then I kind of liked Mike Hughes, the cornerback signing, for similar reasons, but they're just, I don't know, man. I think And maybe it's just me, a Lions fan, wanting to see more. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's I think it's a little bit too early to go out and be spending money that much money in free agency. I think next year, the year after that's when you have to make your big moves. You get the young people, you start to build the culture, and then you collect those people in to take you over the edge.
Yeah, and then just don't be stupid like you did with Shark in the 4 voidable years on a contract that there was no reason to do that.
Hmm.
But we already talked about that last week or the week before. So
Yeah, I
uh,
don't know what the fuck that is.
that was garbage. But, I heard that they were doing that to make sure they had room for Marcus Williams, and it just didn't work out. But whatever. All right, so let's move on to the Green Bay Packers. So their marquee signings, basically, they brought back Devondre Campbell, which I liked. He played really good for them. Rasul Douglas and Robert Tanyan, they brought him back as well. There's not a lot of fresh meat in Green Bay. And we know they lost Devontae Adams. Um, here's one that the ESPN article didn't catch, but they signed Jerron Reed at defensive tackle. I like that signing a lot. I think he's a pretty solid guy on the defensive line. But the reality is Green Bay's going the wrong way. And
Mm,
so, you know, I'm surprised Rodgers stuck around without them having a plan at wide receiver. I'm just being honest.
I
I
am
know
too.
he can make it work with anybody, but it's going to be really hard for him without Devontae Adams.
No, I agree. I'm surprised Rogers stuck around. Apparently, Rogers knew of the potential that they were going to trade Adams
Yeah,
before he decided to stick around. So, which is weird. I don't know. I don't know why he stuck around. Team took steps back. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing to write home about for them. They they still they still have a lot of needs. I mean, wide receiver is one of the big needs. So, like I think because like you look at it, Lazard is he was tendered. He didn't sign. He was tendered a second round free restricted free agent offer. So, but he hasn't signed. So, do they have any wide receivers under contract yet?
I have no idea.
I don't think they do.
Yeah, it's not good, dude. It's not good at all. Um, but I guess, you can say that the NFC is the weaker of the conferences, and so they can still make a playoff run
Hmm.
potentially. Um, but I don't know. It's another move that it just doesn't look good. Doesn't look good for the Packers. But okay, next up we got the Minnesota Vikings. And so James, I will tell you this. I actually really like what I'm seeing from Minnesota's offseason. They signed Zadarius Smith, which is good. They plucked him away from the Packers, and so you steal a guy from inside of the division, and he's going to be good. They signed Jordan Hicks, who I think has been an underrated, rock solid linebacker for a while now. They brought in Harrison Phillips, savvy veteran defensive lineman. And then they brought back Patrick Peterson. I'm telling you, man, I think Minnesota had a really solid offseason so far.
I agree with you. I love what I'm seeing in Minnesota. I was surprised that their win total was only 9 games. When what I mentioned earlier, I was surprised it was only 9 because I really like what they've been doing. I really think they've taken steps forward, and with the NFC being so weak, I mean,
Yeah,
they're one of my favorites to be one of the 3 wildcard teams.
yeah, they've got some dark horse potential so far, in my opinion. And I'll tell you this, it's we've asked questions about, hey, could this coach, this team be, kind of like what Staley did with the Chargers last year? I kind of feel like Kevin O'Connell could be a version of that this year with the Vikings, where
Hmm.
he could come out and they could really have some success because I always caution first year head coaches that, they come out and they draft their opposite. So if they're offensive, they go all defense, thinking, oh, I can make the offense work with anybody because I'm this guru. Normally, I'm like, don't fucking do that. It's going to blow up in your face. And usually it does. In this situation, I actually feel like what they're doing is right because their offense is already set. You got Cousins, you got Dalvin Cook, you got Thielen, you got Jefferson. You got all you need on offense. And so them putting this kind of focus on the defense, it's a perfect complement. I think it's going to set them up. I think it's going to be setting them up really well. I'm excited to see what happens in Minnesota, man.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on, we got the NFC South next, and we'll start off with the Atlanta Falcons. The big news for them, obviously, is Matt Ryan getting traded to the Colts. They signed Marcus Mariota to replace him. Some of their other signings, they had some good re-signings. Young Wei Koo, their kicker, who I like quite a bit. They brought him back. Cordero Patterson, I like that they brought him back because he was, let's be honest, he was their MVP last year. Um, not really like any big home run hit though. I don't, at least not that I'm seeing. I like that they brought in Damian Williams at running back, but that's not like some game changing move. Um, you know, I don't know. Do any of these stick out to you? Maybe Casey Hayward at cornerback, but it's not earth shattering. It helps, but it's not like, you know, I don't know.
Yeah,
I think it hurts with Calvin Ridley. I mean, clearly this team got flipped upside down.
Mhm. It did. And I think, this is why the Calvin Ridley thing hurts so bad for Atlanta. Because yeah, Calvin Ridley wouldn't have been on the team this year. They would have traded him, but they would have those draft picks to address some of their needs, and which they obviously haven't been able to do in free agency. There's nothing
Yep.
earth shattering. So you get an extra draft pick or two, maybe draft, yeah, get an extra draft pick or two to just get bodies in there. That's what they need. I'm trying to recall last year. I think their defense, their defense was the main
Oh,
issue.
yeah, their defense was horrible, man. I mean,
Yeah.
and their defense has been horrible for a long time.
hmm Which is what's so fucked up because I mean, like when Dan Quinn was there, like he's a defensive coach. What the fuck?
Yeah, and that was kind of his downfall is that they had a premier offense when Shanahan was running the show on the offensive side with him and Matt Ryan, but Quinn never got the defense going, and that was like a big thing. It was like, dude, if you could have just put together a halfway decent defense, man, Atlanta could have been a solid team.
hmm Exactly.
But yeah, they're in shambles now, man. They're rebuild city. All right, so next up we got the Carolina Panthers. And for these guys, they had some signings, like they re-signed or they extended DJ Moore. I think that was a great move. I like him a lot. They had a couple signings that, I would say most people don't like get excited about, but I actually thought were good. Um, Austin Corbett on the offensive line signed a 3-year deal. I think that was a pretty solid move. They signed Bradley Bozeman at center on a 1-year deal. I think that was a pretty solid move. Even Corey Littleton at linebacker, they got him on a cheap deal, 1 year, 2.6 million. That's a good value contract for a guy that can be a serviceable starter. You know, nothing like lighting the world on fire. But even safety Xavier Woods signed a 3-year deal. I do like the off season that Carolina's having, but for them, the big question remains: what the heck are they going to do at quarterback?
hmm And that's why I'm disappointed in Carolina not being in on or more in on some of these possible like Jimmy Garoppolo would be a good good fit there. Jimmy Garoppolo can take you to the playoffs, but I don't think I don't think Baker can take this team to the playoffs. Well, I don't know if
No.
he's handing it up. I just don't think he can. Jimmy Garoppolo could be that game manager that takes you to the playoffs. I don't think Baker could do that.
So I guess I'll say this. I think maybe Baker could do it if McCaffrey stayed healthy the entire
Hmm.
season, because then it's all about McCaffrey and Baker just being complementary. I think that if there's risk of McCaffrey getting hurt, which obviously there is, they would be better suited with a guy like Jimmy G. Um, but they're tied to the hip with Sam Darnold. I think he's locked in on a 5th-year contract or a 5th-year option, which is, if I'm not mistaken, it's a guaranteed thing. So, could they feasibly go after Jimmy G? I mean, I'm sure they could get creative and find a way to do it. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because with them being on the hot seat, that he could be their best answer. Bring him in, see if you guys can at least sneak into the playoffs. Even if you get knocked out in the first round, it would be mission accomplished. They could draft a quarterback, groom him for a year, and they would at least have another year after this year to look forward to. Right now, it looks gloom and doom, in my opinion, despite a pretty good offseason, in my opinion.
Hmm.
It's just,
I
man,
agree with you.
yeah,
And it's
you can't get a
the
quarterback, and it doesn't matter. None of these other signings matter if you can't get a quarterback, man.
I mean, how? Like, we'll get to it next one. They could have gotten Andy Dalton for like $3 million.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I would have kicked the tires on Andy Dalton. I think, and I think that's another great example of, if McCaffrey can stay healthy, a guy like Dalton could be more than serviceable while you groom a quarterback behind him and look to the future. But you got to find a way to balance finding a way to win now plus getting the pieces for the future. If you don't win now, there's not going to be a future. These guys are going into year 3. It's just, you don't get that much time in the NFL.
Hmm.
Okay, so up next we got the New Orleans Saints. And so, James, this one was, I mean, their big signing outside of hanging on to Jameis Winston. Their big signing, fresh meat wise, was safety Marcus May, signed a 3-year deal. I like that signing, um, you know, but there's not a whole lot else going on in New Orleans. Teron Armstead's gone. Um, I don't
Didn't
know.
they cut? Didn't they cut a safety?
Was that well? Marcus Williams left from the Saints, and he
Oh,
was
that's right.
he was the big safety everybody wanted this year.
Yeah.
Um,
So I think they couldn't afford. They came into the off season. They had to cut their salary cap by like $250 billion.
Yeah, they
Um,
were originally 70 million over. Yeah, no,
yeah,
I think, hey, you know what? I'll say, just because you said that, James, I'm going to say, you know what? Their off season has been a fucking wild success.
yeah.
Just that they could get under the cap from where they started. No, I think New Orleans hit a home run, man. Even if they win 3 games this year, the fact that they were able to put all this together blows my mind.
I don't know how the hell they did it. Like it's ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah, and the reality is Jameis was looking pretty good until he got hurt. And
Hmm.
so, I know that this team, from a talent standpoint, is taking a step back because their salary cap issues that they had to address. But I like where they're at with Jameis Winston, and he could win some surprising games for them, especially if Mike Thomas comes back and he's healthy. You know, I don't like saying it, but I mean they could be a 500 team if that worked. If Thomas has some bullshit nagging injuries again and doesn't play, or if Jameis gets hurt or whatever, it doesn't matter. They'll be a 3-win team. So,
Well, well, the reason why Thomas didn't play last year was because he had his ankle surgery like the day before the regular season started.
yeah, he waited all the way to the very end. It was like, dude, what are you doing, man? And that was tough because I don't like I don't like criticizing players with their medical stuff if I don't have to, but
Hmm.
from what I recall, the team was urging him to get the surgery so that he would have ample time to heal. He wanted to wait and see if it would naturally heal. They were convinced he needed the surgery. He wasn't. And so he waited. And that's tough because you don't want to force a guy to go under the knife. But at the same time, it's like, hey, man, if you're wrong, then you set all of us back. And that's what happened. He was wrong, and the whole team got hurt because of it. And they were paying him a fuck ton of money for what ended up really being a bad judgment call on his part, in my opinion.
Hmm.
Okay. Not that we needed to fixate on him, but we did, James. That's, we talk football, and that's football, motherfucker.
That's okay.
All right. All right. Moving on. We got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And so, James, hey, their big thing was Brady coming out of retirement and then basically them re-signing as much guys as they could. Um, they did have some new signings that I think are significant, or not even necessarily signings, but like the Shaq Mason trade. I think that helps their offensive line because they did actually lose a couple guys on the offensive line. What's his face retired, but either way,
Yeah.
they shored up the offensive line with Shaq Mason. They signed Russell Gage, which I think was a sneaky good signing. And I know you talked about it last week how Brady called him and he thought it was a prank or something.
Hmm.
I think that's a really, really good signing, especially considering Godwin coming back from a significant knee injury and Antonio Brown lost his shit and he's long gone. I think Gage can be a very key contributor to this team this year.
Yeah, I agree. I like that signing. I sneakily I like the re-signing of Giovanni Bernard.
Yeah, I guess I was expecting to see more of him last year. I thought he'd be in like that James White kind of role, and
Yeah,
I don't know what happened. It just didn't really materialize.
yeah. It didn't materialize. But I like it. I think he's an, if they use him correctly. You also got to remember that they still have to convince Gronk to come back. And wasn't Logan Ryan another one of their free agent signings? I'm trying to.
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah, defensive back Logan Ryan signed with the Bucks. Yep.
Right. I was trying to remember if he like I think he was a free agent.
Yes. Yeah, that was a good
He's taking
signing.
glass.
I like their secondary. They re-signed Carlton Davis. They've got Antoine Winfield Jr. He's up and coming. They've got what's his face, my boy from Central Michigan at the other cornerback spot. Um,
Oh,
they're
Murphy Bunton.
Thank you. They're in my opinion they are good, but they're young and they would benefit from Logan Ryan having that
Hmm.
veteran leadership.
Exactly. That's where I was going with it. I couldn't remember if he was a free agent or if he was there last year. But last year one of the problems Tampa Bay had was their secondary was very hot and cold.
Yep.
And so getting that veteran leadership for the young guys that they have in there, I really like that move.
Yeah, and I think Murphy Bunting was hurt for at least a
Yeah.
chunk of last year, and that hurt him. But um, no, I'm digging what Tampa Bay's doing. They're right back in the mix, and they're right back in the talk of could they make another Super Bowl run? I mean, it could happen. You know.
Hmm.
Okay,
Especially
so
in the weak ass fucking NFC.
yes, definitely. All right, so next up we got the NFC West, and we'll start off with the Arizona Cardinals. Um, A lot of their stuff was re-signing guys. I like that they re-signed. Might sound stupid. I like that they re-signed Colt McCoy. He actually won some games when they needed him. I like that they re-signed James Conner. He had a very good bounce back year. It just makes me nervous because he signed, his contract before and then got hurt.
Hmm.
Uh, is he, now that he's got a 3-year deal, going to have a subpar season? It makes me nervous, man. We see that. I hate saying it, but we see that all too often with running backs. And so,
I don't think Conner is a workhorse running back in the NFL, and I don't like how much they gave him for what I think you can expect out of him.
yeah, and they don't really have a known complement now that Edmonds is gone.
Exactly.
And then they re-signed Zach Ertz. I liked that because I felt like there was a lot of unfinished business with him on that team. It
Hmm.
just seems like he can do a lot more for them. And then, in terms of other signings, this one is under the radar, but they signed Will Hernandez at guard, formerly of the Giants. I like him a lot. He's a guy, he's been a little bit streaky in his career, but when he plays well, damn, man, that guy plays well. And so I think that'll be good for their offensive line. Um, you know, they lost Christian Kirk. They lost AJ Green. I know they got Rondale Moore coming up. They still got Nuke, but they probably need to get some help at wide receiver,
Hmm.
likely coming in the draft at this point.
Yeah, exactly. I like the re-signing of Zach Ertz. I was surprised that they didn't franchise tag him. I thought that they weren't going to risk it because I thought Ertz was going to get a little bit more in free agency
Yeah.
than what the franchise tag was. So I like that they were able to get him. It's about 10 million a year, which is about what the franchise tag was for tight ends.
All right, I gotta read this to you. So I'm looking at this ESPN article, and there's from Josh Weinfuss, the biggest question to be answered for the Cardinals. What are the Cardinals doing? It's still not clear. They made an effort to re sign a handful of their own free agents, but they didn't add any offensive talent. In fact, they've lost players, including running back Chase Edmonds. It's not clear what Arizona's strategy is or if it has one. Uh, it's hey, it's a fair statement, dude. It really is. I mean, I like the re-signings, but for a team that's what did they start last year? Like 7-1 or some shit, and then they fell apart.
Oh, it was. I want to say it was better than that.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, they should be having. Oh man, I don't know, dude. I mean, here, do this. Fucking sign Melvin Gordon.
They got to do something. They only have 5 million in cap space left over, but they have to do something, and that should be enough to get Melvin Gordon.
Sign him, have him paired up with Connor, and you got a freaking awesome 1-2 punch at running back. There you go. Draft some wide receivers. Hope the defense can maintain. It's obviously an offensive team now. So they lost Chandler Jones. I don't know what's going on with J.J. Watt if he's even coming back or what. I don't even know what his deal is. But they lost some other guys on defense. So they're I don't know. I
So they started 10-2. You were right. It was 7-1.
okay.
They started 7-0.
Okay. Yeah, and then so yeah, to be 10-2 and to just freaking flop the way they did. Ah, yeah, no, they need to have a more impactful offseason than what they're having.
Yeah, they do. I mean, you could only say, well, only one of their losses, like they finished the season 1-4, and they lost to Seattle, who sucked last year. They lost to the fucking Lions, and they lost to the Colts. Only loss that's a decent losses. They lost to the Rams 20-20 or 30-23.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on. This is the one that we got to talk about because it just blows my freaking mind. The Los Angeles Rams, James. I mean, just run it back, run it back, run it back. This is where I feel like salary caps do not exist somehow. The Rams, they extended Stafford, which was the right thing to do. Let's see, it says signed what is effectively a 3-year, $129 million extension. Solid. Um, they signed freaking Allen Robinson, 3-year, $46.5 million deal, which I guess is not like, it's not so atrocious when you consider that they traded, what's his face, Robert Woods. That
Mm-hmm.
helps. They re-signed Joe Noteboom. They did have what's his face retire on the offensive line, so that helps them.
Whitworth.
Whitworth retired, so maybe that helped kind of clear up the space for Noteboom. Von Miller went to Buffalo in sort of like in replacement, even though they're different linebacker positions. They freaking signed Bobby Wagner. I just am blown away how they can just hang on to guys, man. Normally, and it's like we saw this with Tampa Bay after they won the Super Bowl. Rare that they were able to maintain that roster. Typically, you see like a mass exodus of guys go and make a freaking ton of money in free agency, and somehow the Rams, they're like in prime position to go back to back now.
So I'm trying to figure this out. Okay, that's why. So what I was trying to figure out was with the Rams, I had them as having 8 million in cap space or 9 million in cap space, and I was trying to figure out how the fuck that was possible with all the shit they did. And I think it's because the Wagner signing isn't listed yet, because I think they have them at being 0 against the cap.
Okay. Yeah, and here while you're looking at that, I'll give you this is a
That's
comment.
what it is.
This is a comment from Nick Wagner. I'm just going to skip through blah 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 blah. The better news for the Rams is that the AFC is loaded with elite quarterbacks and has been making most of the major offseason moves, which leaves the NFC path wide open for another deep run with some minor tweaks in injury luck. We've been saying it for a couple weeks now. The AFC is where it's at, man. That's where all the good football is going to be played this year. The NFC, the only thing I can say about it is that it helps a team like the Rams because if you can sort of skate through your season, you can go into the playoffs possibly more healthy than you would have been otherwise. Some of those AFC teams, when you got to fight tooth and nail against powerhouse teams week in and week out, by the time you get to the playoffs, you could be just like tattered and torn and it could fall apart at any time. And so, you can look at it some different ways. The other way is that if you're in the AFC, you could argue, well, hey, you got to be, to be the best, you got to beat the best. And if you're playing against the best every week, it's just going to help you sharpen that blade and make you that much better. There's a couple ways of looking at it. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, it's true. I think the NFC is basically down to 2 teams. It's the Rams or the Bucks who's going to win.
Yeah.
Everybody else has taken 15 steps back.
I agree with that, and I think the Rams roster is far superior to the Bucks right now.
Mm-hmm. The Rams have improved, and they beat the Bucks last year.
Yep. And I know that when they played the Bucks last year, the Bucks were sort of in that tattered and torn category, but they were healthy enough,
Mm-hmm.
and it just didn't happen. So All right, so moving on here, let's look at the San Francisco 49ers. Yeah, so James,
Is there a move that the 49ers actually made?
Travarius Ward signed a 3 or $40 million deal at cornerback. I like that move, but he is, in my opinion, for that contract, a little bit overrated.
Mm-hmm.
And then I do like they signed Oren Burks to a 2-year contract. He was from the Packers, but he's not, he's depth. He's not, going to be some stud starter. So, um, they lost DJ Jones. They lost Laken Tomlinson. You got the Jimmy G, Trey Lance sort of drama starting to bubble up to the surface. I don't, I don't know, man. I'm not digging what San Francisco did this year, dude.
No,
Uh,
I'm not. I don't like what they did at all. Were they like? I don't think they were way over. So
it just makes me wonder, are they, do they think that they can get it done with what they got? It all comes down to the quarterback for them. Let's be real.
hmm
You
so
know,
I
and
have them like right under the cap at like 1.8 million. So they didn't really have much room to play with.
yeah,
But all these other teams, like the Rams, like they have contracts that like in 2037 based on their cap manipulation. That's when they're going to have issues with the cap. Like that's like
so
it's like
far down the road, who cares?
I
Yeah.
I forget the baseball player, but there's a baseball player that's been retired for like 10 years, and going into the season, he's he's still the biggest salary
Oh,
on the books
yeah, you
for
were
the team.
telling me that, man. Yeah, that's so wild. Well, here, I would imagine that teams like the Rams, they're thinking, hey, just push it all into the future because any year now there could be a CBA change where there just is no more salary cap. And then it's like we got off scot-free. So, they're rolling the dice, man. They're rolling the dice. But no, in reality for the 49ers, I'm okay with them losing Lake and Tomlinson because I think Shanahan's way of running offense, zone blocking, the way he runs the football, I think he can find a replacement fairly well. I think that the Shanahans, not just him but his dad, they've been great at finding offensive linemen to come in and get it done the way they need to. And so I don't think they need to spend big bucks on a guy like Laken Tomlinson. My concern is that it's kind of like it was these last 2 years for them. It's all going to come down to, can they stay healthy or not? If they can stay healthy, this can be a good team. If they can't stay healthy, it doesn't matter. But if Trey Lance isn't ready, that means that they need to hang on to Jimmy G for all that to even matter. So otherwise, it ends up being kind of a wasted year for them, to be honest. Unless they score some stud in the draft. Um, and I don't know how many picks they have after trading up for Trey Lance. So
Yeah, I
I'm a
don't
little
think they
bit
have
nervous
much.
for the 49ers, man.
Yeah, I agree. And so I was referencing this wasn't the one, but it's the Bobby Bonilla contract.
Okay.
Bobby Bonilla every July 1st is paid 1.2 million dollars by the Mets. That that payment will go out to the year 2035.
That's so messed up.
The
That's
last
so
game
messed
he
up.
the last game he played in Major League Baseball. I'm trying to find this. I think it was okay. I think it was the year 2000 or 2001.
Oh my gosh.
Bonilla played for the Mets in 1999 and last played in the majors for the Cardinals in 2001.
So
but will be
he's gonna be
paid
getting
through.
paid for 35 years basically after he's done.
Yes, yes.
They're so what's the team strategy? They're just hoping he dies, so they don't have to pay him.
I don't know. He'll be 72, and the one I was thinking of was Ken Griffey Jr.
Okay.
Ken Griffey Jr. is paid 3.6 million up till the year 2024.
Yeah, baseball's freaking wild, man. It's worse than the NFL by a mile.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we got our last team here. We got the Seattle Seahawks, James, and they have had a freaking crazy offseason. They traded away Russell Wilson. They're getting Drew Lock in return, Shelby Harris, Noah Fant, couple of first rounders, couple of second rounders. But they're basically they're flipping this team upside down. And so when you look at what did they do in free agency to try and improve the team? I mean,
Nwosu?
yeah, Uchenna Nwosu signed a 2-year, $20 million deal. That's a good one. It helps kind of ease some of the pain of Bobby Wagner being gone.
That's
Man,
about it.
it is. I do like that they re-signed Quandre Diggs. I think he's been pretty good for them. They're paying him a lot of money now. And with Jamal Adams next to him, they got a lot of money in their safeties. And it might sound a little weird. I like the combo of Noah Fant and Will Dissly at tight end. And then let's just say this. They've got the draft picks now. Are they going to make some kind of a move for a quarterback? Because they've got um, what's his face at
Drew Lock?
DK Metcalf, and
Ah,
they've got Lockett at wide receiver. I mean, James, I mean, on the offensive side of the ball, if they have a quarterback, they can at least be in games just on the offense alone. And then they could
I
just put everything else on the defense when it comes to the draft or whatever else they got to do.
I agree with you. And here's one I would throw out at you, and if you would go for it.
Let's hear it.
The Seahawks move up from 9 to 2 and draft their quarterback.
From 9 to 2, draft their quarterback. Yeah, and what are you saying? Locke's going to be the bridge guy while they develop Pickett or whoever else?
Mhm. And like heck, like I would take that trade. I would take fucking DK Metcalf for the number 2 pick.
All right, no, let me throw you a wild one. In fact, I'm going to make this question of the week, and I want to talk about it for a minute because I got a lot of wheels turning in my head. So, all right, so listen, this was the last team for the NFC recap. Is there anything that you want to hit before I flip to the question of the week, since this is kind of spurring my question of the week thought?
No, I don't think so. No.
Okay, so I'm just looking at it here. So the Seahawks got 2 first rounders, 2 second rounders, and a 5th rounder. Okay, and so I'm assuming they've got their first round picks on top of that,
Mm-mm.
from this year and next year. No?
No.
Oh, because of the Jamal Adams trade.
Jamal Adams.
Okay.
So these first round picks are replacing their first round picks that the Jets fleeced them for.
So did they give up next year's first round pick too?
I
Or
will
was it
I will
last
double
year's and this year's?
I got to double
Okay.
check that.
Let's just say hypothetically they've got a first rounder this year and then 2 first rounders next year. One from Denver, one that's their own. Their first round this year's from Denver because they gave theirs to the Jets. Let's just say hypothetically they got
They
3
did.
first round picks.
They did.
That jives? Okay.
Yep.
And then they've got, what about for the second rounders? Do they have, is it 2 this year and 2 next year, or is it 3 this year and 1 next year?
They have 2 next year. Let me check this. 2. Looks like they have 2 each year.
Okay. So, I mean, I'm just going to run with this and let's just talk about it. This is question of the week, James. Because Pete Carroll is still there, and the assumption was if this team was going to a rebuild, he would retire. Drew Lock is not the answer. That Drew Lock is rebuild city, but yet Pete Carroll's still there. Do you think there's some crazy scenario where they could package some of these picks and make a fucking move for Aaron Rodgers? I don't understand what Rodgers is doing in Green Bay without Devontae Adams, man.
I want to say yes.
But you feel like it's far-fetched?
I think it's so. If you're talking about before Rodgers recommitted to Green Bay, then maybe.
Because I
But
feel like I mean, and let's just talk this out for a minute. But I feel like the Seahawks could package picks that would be attractive to Green Bay and say, look, man, you guys aren't giving him what he needs to succeed anyhow. Take all these picks, use some of them to trade for Jimmy G so that you have your serviceable guy to fight with Jordan Love and see who can get you wherever you need to go. You focus on running the shit out of the ball with Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon, and maybe you can still make a run because the NFC sucks. For Rodgers, it could be probably a very attractive scenario for him because he's going to have arguably the 2 best receivers he's ever had at one time, and a couple of decent tight ends. Uh, and the defense is mediocre, but it makes Seattle a playoff team again. Um, and I think it makes sense for Pete Carroll to still be in the equation. Otherwise, I just don't see why Pete Carroll's there. Um, I don't know. I don't know, man. I think if they were gonna use the picks and try to draft and develop a quarterback, it doesn't seem Pete Carroll-esque at this point of his career. It seems like maybe they're banking on making one more move to get a quarterback.
so my initial premise about the Rodgers recommitting to Green Bay and with the extension was the cap hit.
Okay.
But I'm looking at it, and so if the trade happens before June 1st, it'll be $125 million dead cap hit.
For the
But
Packers.
for the Packers.
Oh man.
But if they trade, and so that's why I was like, no, it's not possible. That's way too big of a cap hit.
Yeah.
But if they trade him after June 1st, it's a $27 million cap hit, dead cap hit, which is actually less than his salary.
That's doable.
Yeah,
And then they go and get a guy like frickin' Jimmy G, unless they think Jordan Love's going to be able to do something.
but then they have like $100 million dead cap hit next year for him.
Yeah. So it because of the cap hit, it seems unreasonable.
Yeah.
Or does the yeah, I guess I got to better understand how does the future dead cap work, because if Seattle's taking on his contract, doesn't some of that transfer, or Because if none of that transfers, and yeah, there's just no way Green Bay could take $100 million bath next year.
Yeah,
So,
it's just no way.
all right, well, it was fun to think about for a second. When I started seeing all the picks that Seattle has, I started getting excited, thinking, man, maybe they could just make a move to get a quarterback. And it seems weird that Rodgers is getting nothing to play with in Green Bay.
Yeah, I do think it's weird as well. Um, I wanted to take. That's what I wanted to take a look at. Like, who do they actually have under contract
I don't know, dude. I
at wide
mean,
receiver?
their top three guys are all gone. Devontae Adams, Lazard, and MVS, man. Those are their top three guys. They're all gone, man. Or at least I thought Lazard was gone. Maybe
No,
he's still.
Lazard was like tendered. So,
Okay. So there
so
you go. That's his go-to guy,
they
Alan
have
Lazard.
Randall Cobb, Allen Lazard.
Randall
Um,
Cobb he's one of those rare wide receivers that just did not age well. You know, sometimes receivers that are good when they're young can like make it for a long time. And it just seemed like somewhere along the way he just like hit the brakes.
and Amari Rogers.
Yeah, they're in trouble.
Yeah.
And what are they going to do? Draft a couple guys? I mean, it can happen. You could get a Jamar Chase or a Justin Jefferson, but I think it's awfully rare, James.
Yeah.
At least they brought back Robert Tonyan. And
Yeah.
and,
At
and
least they
look,
brought back Big Bob.
yeah, and they do have the you know the tandem at running back that can be their focal point potentially. It goes to what they did a couple years ago when LaFleur was in his first season, where they ran the shit out of the ball and everybody was like, "What's going on? Why isn't Rodgers throwing more?" That's obviously what they're going to have to do this year.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's all I got for tonight, man. You got any closing thoughts?
No, I don't.
All right, was my question of the week stupid?
No, thought provoking until you realize the cap hit.
Yeah, well, that's why we talk all this shit out. I'm glad you caught that. But all right, so yeah, for anybody who's still watching, we hope you like the show. Hit us up, name that stadium, answer our question of the week. We like getting some feedback and having some engagement here. And if you liked it, hit the like button or the thumbs up if you're on Facebook or whatever. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button for us. It helps us. James, like always, man, it was a great time. I'll catch you later, homie.
All right.
Gridiron Grinder. Hut hut hike.